Hi again, everybody, and welcome to Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So glad you could be with us for another hour, and today we're going to be talking about the Syracuse Orange Men, and there are a couple of guys in particular that I know Giants fans are probably a little bit interested in. So in just a bit, we're going to talk to former Syracuse offensive lineman who also played for the Baltimore Ravens, Adam Terry. He is now the radio analyst with the Orange Men up in upstate New York, and we'll get the lowdown on some of their NFL draft prospects. As a reminder, you can always get a listen of this program on the archive at all of your podcast platforms everywhere, the Giants Podcast Network, giants.com/podcasts, and we certainly invite you to do that if you cannot catch the show live every weekday at 12:30 p.m. 201-939-4513 is our phone number, but we're going to get to Adam Terry momentarily. So we're going to do a little talk about Syracuse, then we'll open up the phone. So if you guys want to kind of hang for 10 or 15 minutes and, not have to dial in because you're not going to get anywhere at that point, we understand. And then we'll be very glad to take your phone calls. Just to set up this Adam Terry call, knowing that we were going to have him on. Now, I had talked to Kyle McCord, the quarterback for Syracuse, at the Combine. I did get in on his podium because I was interested and I wanted to double back on him. I made sure I did extensive film work on him last night. Watched a couple games, watched some cut-ups. I am undoubtedly higher on him than a lot of other people are. I have basically decided, Matt, after watching what I've watched, yes, the consensus three are Ward and Sanders and Dart. And then there's a line, because those are the only three that most people think could be gone in the first round.
Yep.
Right? That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then there's a line. And there's the next group. I think that Tyler Shuck of Louisville is at the top of that next group for me. And I knew that at the Combine, by the way everybody was talking. He was quickly rising up, and then when you look at some of the tape, you can see why. He looks like a prototypical NFL quarterback, right off of a Hollywood movie set. I have not liked the other quarterbacks in the class, but I purposely waited to look at the tape on McCord until we were going to have this show. I like him. I think he is right behind Shuck for me. When you talk about day two quarterbacks, project quarterbacks who need work, they're not ready-made, they're not plug-and-play guys, but they can be NFL starters. I think it's Shuck, and right behind him, in my mind, is Kyle McCord. I don't know how much you know about him. I don't know how much you've watched, but if it's not Shuck and it's not McCord, I'm not taking any other quarterback in this draft once it gets past those guys.
Yeah, so I actually have a lot of family that went to Syracuse, so I have watched some Syracuse football, especially this past season. Yeah, when you get to the second tier of quarterbacks, that's where you get, Tyler Shuck, Kyle McCord, Jalen Milroe. I would put Will Howard in there, Quinn Ewers. It's probably those five.
Even Brosmer got some all-star considerations.
And so I agree that it certainly looks like Shuck is going to be the first one taken, and it could be earlier than people think on day two, one of the first 5 to 10 picks on day two. But when you get past him, it's sort of just like pick your flavor, because these quarterbacks are they all bring something a little different to the table. I will say Kyle McCord is probably one of the most, I guess, pro-ready of that group. Because of the system. Exactly. Because of the system he ran, he might have the easiest transition. I don't know if I necessarily agree on his upside being the highest. I think Jalen, if you're going to sit this guy for basically all of 2025, Jalen Milroe, to me, probably has the highest ceiling, although his floor, I think, is lower than Kyle McCord. It's riskier because he's going to take some real developing in order for him to reach his true potential, while I would put Kyle McCord and Will Howard in a similar category. I don't know if McCord would be my second quarterback in that group. I would take the chance on Milroe's upside, I think. And I think
different
I'd
style.
honestly even argue
Different
Will
style.
Howard over McCord, but I would not knock anyone for saying they would want Kyle McCord out of that next tier of quarterbacks.
All right, let's go to our guest, Adam Terry, former Syracuse offensive lineman, second-round pick of the Baltimore Ravens, and now a radio analyst with the Syracuse Orange Man. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope things are well. And as you just heard, as you were on hold a couple of moments ago, we were just introducing your segment talking about Kyle McCord, who I just did extensive film work on yesterday. And much to my surprise, Adam, because I did not watch any Syracuse football during the course of the season, I truly believe that he's right under Tyler Shough as to me, the number 2 rated second-day quarterback in this NFL draft. I'm going to ask you, sell me on why that should be true, and tell me or pick it apart as to why that might not be true.
Well, I think beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, and I think there are going to be a couple people that are, he could slide into the end of the first round just because people want him. Look, I think Kyle McCord is a polished prospect that's played at Ohio State. He's led them pretty far, and yes, they had the detractors on him at Ohio State, but then comes into this Jeff Nixon offense. Jeff Nixon was the offensive coordinator who's up for the Houston Texans offensive coordinating job, and he plugged himself in to that offense and just took it and ran with the whole thing. So at the beginning of the season, I was the guy that was like, in Syracuse going, hey, 6-6, Fran Brown, the new head coach coming up from Georgia. He's that type of guy. But what they got out of Kyle McCord was not just a great quarterback, but he's a glue guy. He's walks into the locker room. He's wise beyond his years, and he dragged a couple guys along with him that needed to be dragged along. And then once they understood how good he was, they started bringing everybody else along. So my biggest thing that I'm looking at Kyle McCord is he's surgical precision when he's passing. Yes, we can go back to the Pittsburgh game, but to me that was an anomaly where he had those 6 picks, and it was just a bad game overall. You look at what he was able to do getting the ball to the outlet as far as running backs goes. LaQuinn Allen was the recipient of a lot of just dink and dunk out of the backfield, get him going. He can throw the ball deep. He's shown that over a period of time. But what I like him in is he can get that ball in a tight window, get it out fast. And that is just the high-level IQ that he plays with. What do I have to sell the New York Giants on? The fact that he grew up a Jets fan, well, that's the only detractor for him. But you're, Mount Laurel, New Jersey kid, grew up in that Philly area. He doesn't look like he's going to the Eagles. He's probably in that vicinity of a Giants draft pick that can really get behind a Northeast guy. And that's what I see in Kyle McCord. Really, my pick on Kyle McCord for the New York Giants is contingent upon not him, but how's that offensive line doing? Because I was listening a little bit earlier, and you're saying Jalen Milroe opposed to Kyle McCord. I mean, if that offensive line is pretty porous and the water's leaking through the dam, he's probably not going to be your guy. Right. You might want somebody to be able to scramble out of the pocket and get yards after that. But Kyle McCord's everything that you turn the film on. He's a little bit better than you anticipated. He throws the ball a little bit better than you anticipate. He scrambles a little bit better than you anticipate. I think he's this sleeper that at the East-West Shrine game, he was able to throw to a couple Syracuse guys that went out to the East-West Shrine with him. And he has just kind of continued to build each week and has this kind of mounting ability going into the draft. I spoke with Jordan Palmer, who's his quarterback guy, and he kind of has the same synopsis that I have. Really likable guy, good locker room guy. He's starting to come on at that right point in time, right before the draft. And some people have talked, hey, late first. I realistically think he's a day two guy, early second round guy. But if there's somebody that really wants him, and I think there's a couple that really want him, somebody's going to go, have to leapfrog a couple people in order to get that done, depending on how these first-round draft picks go.
Yeah, so Kyle McCord really got on, everyone's radar in his one full season starting at Ohio State, obviously then transferred to Syracuse, where all of his numbers, jumped pretty significantly. What do you think clicked for him in that 1 year at Syracuse that, led to that big jump?
Well, everybody plays a little bit better with a chip on their shoulder. When you get run out of the horseshoe in Columbus, Ohio, I think he came on a redemption tour. And a lot of people say that, but I think he just came in laser focused. He had a point to prove that he was who he thought he was. And when you have a head coach in Fran Brown who's reinvigorating this orange nation, he goes in and he goes and finds a guy that he had a pre-existing relationship with, and he knew who he wanted, and then they went out and got him. And for Kyle, it's we're forever indebted to a guy like that took a chance to come in to rely on what he knew he could do that some really didn't know if he could do. And you just saw a electric year, and it'll probably be the most draft picks for Syracuse since 2001, which was led by Dwight Freeney in his Hall of Fame career.
Adam, one of the things that I liked about what I saw, and you're going to have to tell me if this is truly an accurate perception because you saw every snap. I did not. But what it looked like to me was, not only was it a pro-style offense, but it was diverse. They had all kinds of packages up there. They ran pretty much anything that you would want to run on an NFL team. And they basically said to him, it looks like at least, that you're the guy and you truly are going to run this ship. It wasn't like, we got to run a ton of RPOs for this guy because he's got a bunch of athleticism. Like Milroe. Everybody knows. Alabama utilized his legs more than anything else. We get that. He has a strong arm, but his legs were incorporated as a big part of the plan. There are these guys who are, quote, system quarterbacks. I don't get that impression out of McCord. I think he's probably better off that he went to a pro-style attack that showed him all kinds of different responsibilities. And as far as being a pocket passer, he's got enough escapability to where if the line is in a sieve, I think he's still able to do enough back there that he can get the ball out.
I agree with you. I look at, when you go back to his Ohio State career, he had a lot of big-name wide receivers that he had to get the ball to. And that's not a bad thing. When you've got these top-tier guys that you've got to distribute the ball to, as we know, some of them want the ball a little bit more than others, and they're going to let you know. I don't know if that was the situation, but from my perspective watching it, that's what I saw a little bit at Ohio State. And in this Jeff Nixon offense that was Kyle McCord being the trigger puller, he reminded me much of like a point guard that doesn't have any guys that he needs to get to the ball to, right? Like if you're open, he's dishing it. It's going, right? And there are a couple checks, check downs, hot routes, having just the ability to, he gets that ball, there's no pat, it's boom, right up to the shoulder, it's delivered fast. And his biggest accomplishment was throwing guys open and letting them run with the football, right? So if he's acknowledging that there's a corner or a slot blitz or there's some type of pressure coming up the middle, he just exploited areas of the field that I haven't seen done in a long time, especially watching Syracuse quarterbacks. I haven't seen that done, but also watching throughout the nation and just different college institutions. He was able to take the ball, distribute it, and everybody was a recipient of his ability to just get the ball out quickly. Now, he could throw a deep ball, too. I mean, there's a couple shots down the field that he can, really change that platform, get the ball deep, high point the ball for a lot of guys. So it was the ability for him to just get that ball out and have those quick reads that it helps him at the next level, too, right? If that offensive line's not up to snuff, there's only so many times you can get hit. So you've either got to distribute the ball quickly and understand what you're doing, or you're going to take a lot of sacks and you're going to get beat up. And your first year is, that David Carr year when he was at Houston, where you're just getting physically beat up, and then that knocks down your ability to think well about yourself. Let's just put it that way. The confidence gets knocked down fast.
In short, Adam, it looked like they trusted him with the entire playbook. That's what it looked like to me.
Oh, I mean, beyond that, I think he was the offensive coordinator that was on the field. When you have a headset now going to the quarterback with a green dot, there's only so much information that you can get out there before it turns off. Well, Kyle McCord just can keep going with that, right? So when you have a full grasp and an understanding of what your OC wants you to do, you have the understanding of the demeanor of what this team is supposed to be offensively from your head coach. He was just able to go out there and embody, a fantastic leverage into a fantastic season for him, and then also the ability to go into this draft. So, look, I don't know if there's anything more I can say about Kyle McCord, because he is, when you sit down with him, he's a bright, articulate guy that can really turn people around and get behind him. That getting run out of town in Columbus, that can demoralize a lot of people. And I just think that chip on the shoulder led him into revitalizing Syracuse, a great historic Northeast program, and has led the ability for others to start to see that within that university too. So he's not just going to be a great pro, he was a great ambassador for this institution.
So moving elsewhere to the offense, you mentioned this guy a little earlier, LaQuint Allen. The last 2 seasons had, over 2,800 yards from scrimmage, 30 total touchdowns. Looking like he's likely going to be one of those, day 3 running back selections. But what is it about his game that makes you think he could put together an NFL career and actually, stick around for however many years?
Well, former Gatorade Player of the Year out of the state of New Jersey. I think the Giants like that. He's not the most fleet of foot, right? So he's not going to run that blazing 40. He's going to probably be in that mid 4.5, high 4.5, low 4.6 right there. So, with that, you're going to have to scrap that and have a belief in what this guy can do. Now, with that being said, he's not the most fleet of foot, but he can catch the ball out of the backfield. You want that out of a third down back. His physical toughness, he can change the momentum in a game by just how he runs behind his pads. First and second down guy that also can catch the ball out of the backfield. At worst case scenario, he can bump himself up if he can play some special teams. Just one of those guys that it might take him 2 years in a system to really have a couple people believe in him. But if there's a scout that's going to pound on the table and say, hey, you know what, this guy can play every down. Oh, and by the way, not only catch the ball out of the backfield, but when he wants to go nail somebody and there's a blitz coming or there's some type of leakage on the front, he's going to let you know, right? Yeah. There's been a couple times where he's depleted defensive tackles. He's been able to chip and then get into a route off of that defensive end, helping that tackle. And then, some cross blitzes, some zone pressures where he can really get up and knock out, literally go up there and go toe-to-toe with a big linebacker that's bearing down on him. So he has a lot of the facets that you're looking for in someone's game to be this new running back within the NFL. We got to be able to catch the ball, got to be able to block, and then most importantly, first and second down, is he a guy that can tote the rock like that? You look back, end of the game versus UNLV, turn the clip on. He does it earlier in the game, and then in order to win the game, they give him, he bounces the ball outside, gets outside of the tackle, has to go up on a linebacker in safety and just keeps his legs moving and wins the thing for him. That's another guy that you want in your locker room. All of the Syracuse guys this year are guys that you want in your locker room, want in your program, because if they're not going to be on the field right away, they're very much a developmental guy that's only going to take a year or two to understand what they need to do in order to be a professional.
I'm glad you mentioned about the blocking and the toughness, because I don't think he's got breakaway speed. for the NFL, and there are times where he seemed to run a little too upright. But if that's the only nicks in his armor, this guy's just a real football player. He's going to knock the snot out of you, especially, like you said, if someone's coming on a blitz. Coaches love that kind of blue-collar guy. So I appreciate what you said there. I mean, it certainly carries a lot of weight with me. Oronde Gadsden, tight end, who, is one of those, quote, receiving tight ends. I know it's all going to depend on the system and where he goes and what they want him to do, because if you're going to want him to do some inline stuff, I don't think that's really his forte. But as far as his ability to excel in the passing game, Adam, it seems to me that there are going to be some teams who are going to need that kind of tight end, and they're going to want to look at him.
Yeah, he's a great young man, right? Like I'm around the program quite often, and I played in the NFL, and hopefully my kids act the way that he acts. His dad played a long time in the league, 7-8 years, played good seasons down in Miami for the Dolphins, but just how he carries himself. He's not entitled. He's a hard worker, a genuine kid that just loves ball, right? Just one example of him. I take my son out to Colgate, and we're watching a game during one of our bye weeks. Who do I see there? Oronde Gadsden, just watching football, just, soaking it all in. So those things mean a lot to me, especially as a former guy when you go into the locker room. But Oronde is a big-bodied kid, right? 6'4", 6'5", 240, 245 pounds now. So he's bulked up a little bit over the course of time. And is he the nasty inline blocker? No, but if you put him on a wing, right? So if there's a tight end and there's the second tight end, he's a wing-type guy. He's a guy that can motion and do enough to displace somebody. It's not always going to just be a stalemate. So he's going to be able to displace somebody on split zones and things like that. But then, we all know him for his forte of catching football. He's the security blanket, over a course of time for Garrett Schrader a few years ago, the Syracuse quarterback, and then this year, Kyle McCord. He has a very extensive catch radius. So if that ball goes up in the air, fantastic vertical, but also the length of his arms to catch the ball away from him and separate with his body, but also separate with his hands. So those are the things that you start to look at a guy like that is he can run away from you, but if you've got a nickel in there or a fast linebacker that can really run with some of these tight ends nowadays, he can catch the ball away from his body. He's not just catching it and bring it in like a loaf of bread. He's catching it away from his body, stabbing it out of the air, bringing it back in. So Oronde is one of those guys that you just continually look at, and he had to deal with a lot last year. He had an injury. It took him out for the whole season, and just to watch him work his way back and get back into the lineup, he easily, at the beginning of this year, could have gone somewhere else. And like I said, I think when you look at glue guys in the locker room, you got a kid like Kyle, you got a kid like LeQuint, and then Oronde is not necessarily that vocal guy, but when you need something late in the game or in a pinch, he's going to be the guy that he's that silent assassin.
Yeah, moving over to the defensive side of the ball real quick. Fidel Diggs, edge rusher. Great size, great length, athleticism. I guess what sort of role do you think he can play in the NFL? You see him more as maybe like a situational pass rusher, primary like special teams player. What do you think he can grow into at the next level?
I think he's that Swiss Army knife, and coming from a lineage of being down in Baltimore with a guy like Rex Ryan, I think if Wink Martindale was still up in New York, like he's that type of guy. Like Elijah Robinson, the defensive coordinator, comes in from Texas A&M. He brings him in as well. And at the beginning of the year, we had a fantastic older guy, Marlo Wax, who is vocal leader, has been through a lot. He goes down with injury. So, we're in this 4-2-5 look. The next week, all of a sudden, Fidel Diggs has his hand up and he's roaming around like a middle linebacker. So his versatility was fantastic. Now, long term, he can jump off the edge just like anybody else. So if he puts his hand down, I know what he's capable of doing on that edge. And it's going to take him a little bit, right? Like he has all those intangibles, the speed, the length of the arm, the quickness, but it's also going to be finding his home. So a little bit this year, he didn't necessarily have a home. He was doing it for what this defense needed every week throughout the season, and that's what you want to see, right? You want to see a selfless player, but I think his development in the NFL is going to be, can he get into that three-point stance, rush off the edge, and really start to pressure the quarterback? I know he can stand up and do a lot of different things, but it's going to be just that development as a player. And you see a lot of defensive ends get into the NFL and have had a lot of success, and they've ceilinged. They have that ceiling once they, 1 or 2 years in. I think his surface is just barely getting scratched as an outside rusher. He jumps off that edge really fast. I would have loved to have seen him throughout the whole season, being able to get after an offensive tackle. So, sometimes you can play that cat and mouse game. You look over the years of a Strahan, a Justin Tuck, an Osi Umenyiori that the Giants have had. They can start to play that cat and mouse game just because that guy's hands down throughout most of the game. So I just like what he's capable of doing. The only thing for him, if you want to be a detractor on that, he's a little bit lighter. I think he's in that 260-pound, but give him a couple years in a system where his hand is down, he's going to be that 270, 275-pound guy if that's what's determined by a team to be his most valuable asset.
I'm glad you explained that he was selfless and did what was required with the scheme, because we knew when he was at Texas A&M, the production did not jump off the page, but the traits do. And as you know, these personnel guys, you get late into the third day, they're looking for traits. And if they get him in here and then they say, okay, coaches, this guy's got the traits, now polish him up and get the most out of him, and maybe you got a diamond in the rough who actually does wind up getting you production that is equal to the traits. I kind of see like he might be one of those guys. And I think, Adam, you've explained it to me. Now, I don't know what happened at Texas A&M, why the production wasn't more, but you're telling me he was so selfless at Syracuse. That explains something to me.
Yeah, I just, I can only speak from what I saw out on the field, and he's a guy that got played in a lot of positions, right? I think for him leaving Syracuse, I don't necessarily think it's his best body of work per se. Like you're saying, he didn't get as many sacks as he should have. He didn't do, as many tackles for loss, but he was always in the mix for a lot of these different things. And I continually go back to the selfless nature of what he had to do. Was just, in order for that defense to progress throughout the season, if it wasn't for Fidel Diggs, I don't think they do as well, right? He was a guy that at the beginning of the season, he's a pass wrecker, right? Coming off the edge, that's my expectation. I know he can do that in the ACC against these tackles. And then all of a sudden, game 2, they're in a 3-3 stack, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So he's building off of that. So, yeah, he might be the fourth rusher, but he might be coming from linebacker depth, or the different variables that are in a situation that he didn't have a lot of control over. But what he could do is he could control a game by being that valuable piece that Elijah Robinson could use as that chess piece.
That is former NFL offensive lineman and Syracuse grad Adam Terry, part of the Syracuse Radio Network, the analyst on the games. And Adam, I can't thank you enough for your time today, because, as you know, we got a ton of Syracuse grads in the New York metropolitan area. So I know they wanted to get your insight on these guys as they progress to the next level. It was certainly a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, fellas.
So, maybe Kyle McCord isn't getting as much ink as maybe he deserves as one of the project quarterbacks. I can only tell you, until I got to really sit down and watch him, his name didn't jump off the page to me. After you watch him, you feel better.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
As I said at the start of the show, he is in that, tier 2 of quarterbacks, but doesn't really get the buzz that, Tyler Shough has been getting, Jalen Milroe.
Riley Leonard, Notre Dame. He's another one of those guys who seems to be in that cluster.
Yeah, so I agree. I don't know. Maybe it's just because he was doing this at Syracuse that he's sort of flown under the radar.
They hadn't been good for a while.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly had a good season.
10 wins.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he the leading passing in terms of yardage in the NCAA this year?
I believe so.
I think he was, which should have attracted a little bit more attention. Anyway, so that's the scoop on the Syracuse Orangemen. And again, we appreciate the time of Adam Terry giving us all of that info. Let's see if we can go to the calls. I know we had someone on, and is he gone? We had somebody on the line and decided to hang up the phone. So he couldn't hang with us. He probably had to get back to work. That's what happens when you do a show during lunchtime. Sometimes people got that little break and then, boss is calling, got to get back outside. So we do appreciate you trying to call in. And sir, or lady, if you, I don't want to discriminate against anybody. He's laughing over there. It could have been a youngster for all I know on his lunch break from school. Whoever you were, please try to give us a call back, and hopefully we can answer your question. All right. Now, one of the things that I think, people talk about all the time are those 30 for 30 visits, right? What you also need to understand is that I believe Syracuse is within the radius of the Giants to where if they want to look at any of these guys, they become a local visit. There's a difference, and I know maybe you want to address that with the fans. There is a difference, and that's why you may not read about any of these guys from Syracuse because they don't get special 30 visits. They're part of the local group.
Yeah, so each team around the league obviously has the 30 prospects they bring in for visits, but then on top of that, teams are allowed to bring in what are considered local prospects. I don't know the exact, mile radius.
Yeah, there's a radius. I forget what it was.
I don't know what exactly that is. It wouldn't surprise me at all, though, if Syracuse fell inside that radius. I mean, clearly, I guess the Bills would only be the more local team for Syracuse. But so, yeah, you can bring more of those guys in that don't count towards your top 30 visits. So,
and that's good. That's good because, if you've got some decent talent in your region, you can bring these guys in and not have to lose other guys on your want list.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, everyone will tell you the more guys that you can get your eyes on, your hands on, up close and personal, spend time with in the lead up to the draft, the better, because there's so much to know about so many different prospects that you want to obviously gather as much intel about as many people as you possibly can. So the more guys you could bring in for a visit, the better.
All right, 201-939-4513. Yes, we do. And so that's why we're going to go to those people. Enough of us. Let's go to Nate in Pennsylvania. You're first on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hey, good afternoon, guys.
What's going on?
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
And I wanted to both give you guys your props. I love the show. I've been listening admirably for a long time, but never get a chance to call. So
you're very kind.
A couple minutes today, and wanted to offer up a comment on our first-round selection that I haven't heard you guys discuss on the show yet this year.
Let's hear it.
And with maybe not necessarily the number 3 overall pick, I think this is a scenario where you might entertain trading down, especially if one of those two premier players are left at 3, but my concern is with the offensive line. It has been for years, and it seems like our offensive line plays really well until Andrew Thomas gets hurt, and then the spiraling begins. And so one of the names I want to throw out there, not suggesting we take him at 3, but if there's a trade-down scenario that makes sense to the front office, I want to hear your guys' opinion on taking Armand Membo from Missouri. Again, not at number 3, but possibly a trade down later in the top 10. And here's the reason why. I'm concerned, as I mentioned, about Thomas, but more importantly, I'm also concerned about the fact that both Illuminor and Evan Neal contracts are up at the end of this coming season, neither one of which I think is a long-term solution at the position. And if we were to get a guy like Membo to play at right tackle, which is where he's played the majority of his college career, it allows us to move a guy like Illuminor or Neal or any of the guys we brought on board to right tackle and really secure that line, not only for this year but for years to come. So, again, love the show. listen to your comments offline. But what are your thoughts on trading back a little bit and possibly securing Membo?
Before you go, what neighborhood are you talking about? When you say trade back, are you talking 7 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20? What neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean, I've been listening to a lot of the draft day shows that John puts on, and it seems like Membo's a guy that's climbing recently, and so I definitely wouldn't want to trade out of the top 10. Maybe 5 or 6 is a sweet spot to ensure you get a guy like him. But even if you slide back from 3 to 5 or 6, could we pick up an additional third or a fourth-round selection to use on a D tackle or an extra edge guy, and also secure that right tackle?
Thanks for the call.
Thank you, Nate.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, you want to take a whack at this?
Yeah. So, personally, I think Membo will end up being the first offensive lineman taken. I think he's going to go before Will Campbell. Kelvin Banks from Texas seems to be dropping a little bit. I think after what Membo did at the Combine, he's going to be the first offensive lineman taken because he is an athletic freak of nature. He really is. He's 6'4", 332 pounds. He ran a 4.91 40, 34-inch vertical jump, 31 bench press reps. This guy is just a beast. He really is. And he, played well at right tackle for Missouri. Look, after what the Giants offensive line has gone through for, let's call it, the last decade, I will never criticize the front office for stockpiling more talent on the offensive line. I don't think I would do it at 3. I think that would be a little rich. I mean, as Nate mentioned, it wouldn't be at 3. But if the Giants were to trade down, and it's probably going to have to be in the top 10 because I don't think he's going to drop out of the top 10. If the Giants were to drop down, maybe let's say let's call it 7 or 8 range. But again, as we talked about yesterday with trading down a little bit, if I'm trading past 5, whatever team is trading up needs to give me their first round pick next year.
At least.
That plus sprinkle a little more. But I'm not trading down past 5 unless that team is willing to give up their first round pick. That's like a non-negotiable, non-starter for me. If, let's say, the Jets at 7, or I forgot who's at 8, whoever it is, if they're willing to give me their first plus maybe, a third-round pick this year or fourth-round pick, whatever the trade value chart says equals fairly.
8 is Carolina.
I don't know if they're going to trade more draft picks after what happened a couple years ago.
I don't think so either.
But whatever. If there is a team in the top 10 willing to do that, I would certainly entertain that. I mean, as much as I would love, obviously, Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at 3, or if Shedeur Sanders is there and the front office thinks that's their guy, then you stay and pick him. But if the Giants are not fully convinced on, let's say, Shedeur Sanders or that next tier of quarterbacks, as we said yesterday, stockpile as much draft picks as you can in next year's draft, where it looks like the quarterback crop will be more talented than this year. And what better way to help that future franchise quarterback as a rookie than drafting the top offensive lineman this year? So I would not criticize it at all if the Giants were to trade down and take Membo. But as Nate mentioned, at 3, it would be a little too rich for me, even anywhere in the top 5, because as we said yesterday, if I'm going down to 5, I'm targeting Mason Graham.
I agree totally.
But if you're falling to that 6 to 10 range and Mason Graham is no longer an option, Membo certainly would be one of the guys I'd be looking at, along with, maybe a guy like Tyler Warren, just to add another playmaker. But yeah, I like Membo a lot. I think he's going to be, if he lands in the right situation, I think he's going to be very good, and I don't think it's going to take him too long to develop into a good offense tackle.
Yeah, in this case, I see your logic, and I have no issue with it at all. I could not, however, pass on Mason Graham. And like you said moments ago, if you go beyond 5, you're going to lose Graham. I'm sure you're going to lose Graham. So that would make him much more logical, Membo, much more logical for me, or Will Campbell if you decided that you liked him better. The point is, if you wanted to take a stud tackle somewhere between 5 and 10, makes perfect sense. I have no problem with that whatsoever. None. But, again, I need a first-rounder plus. I might even need your next year's number 2 in addition to next year's number 1, or maybe next year's 1 and 3.
I think it depends.
It depends.
How far down you drop.
Exactly. exactly, depending upon the slot. But it's starting with your next year number one.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no conversation. I'm hanging up the phone, and, even if Carter and Hunter are gone, I'm taking Mason Graham. That's it.
I'm with you. Now, I have an interesting scenario I just want to quickly bring up before we go back to the calls, because I saw this on Twitter last night, and at first I just poo-pooed it, but now Eric Edholm from NFL.com put a mock draft out just now, and so he has the top three going: Cam Ward 1, Abdul Carter 2, and then the Giants taking Travis Hunter at 3. And this doesn't necessarily exactly pertain to the Giants, but in this mock draft, after the Browns take Abdul Carter at 2, he has Shedeur Sanders dropping all the way down to 15, where he has Cleveland trading back up from 33, the first pick in the second round, trading the 33rd pick, then their third round pick, which is 67th, and their fourth round pick, which is 104, to move up to 15 and then take Shedeur Sanders at 15. And I only bring that up because obviously the Giants, their 3 picks in those rounds are almost exactly the same. Instead of the 33rd pick, they have the 34th. Then they have the first pick in the third round, and that 104 pick, they have 105 in addition to 99. So let's just say this hypothetical situation is on the table where Shedeur Sanders is still there when I think it's the Falcons at 15 or on the clock.
It is the Falcons. It is.
Would you be willing to offer essentially the Giants versions of those picks to move up from 34 and pair Travis Hunter with the third pick and Shedeur Sanders at 15?
I would not. I would not pick Shedeur Sanders. I've already made that very clear. Okay. And those 3 picks, as we discussed yesterday, and we both agreed with this. We may not agree on all the value of all of the positions in the clusters, but those second and third round picks are going to turn out to be pretty darn good players.
For sure.
That's a pretty big haul for a quarterback who there are enough of people who don't really have a lot of confidence in.
No, that's fair. And I guess a counter argument would be to making this trade is that if you like Shedeur Sanders, then you just take him at 3. Why risk passing on him and having to trade back up? I mean, again, unless Travis Hunter is
but they pick. He's got Carter at 2 to them.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's why then.
No, but I'm saying in the Giants situation.
Oh, if you're the Giants,
if you want Shedeur Sanders, you just take him at 3. You don't necessarily risk it unless just maybe Shedeur Sanders, let's just hypothetically say, is number 10 on your board, and then all of a sudden you get to 15 after you took Travis Hunter at 3. You get to 15. And Shedeur is still there. He's the top player on your board and at a position of need. Then maybe you entertain it. So I just saw this mock draft, and it made me think, because I did see someone float this hypothetical idea for the Giants last night, taking Travis Hunter at 3, and then if Shedeur falls or starts to fall, trading to the middle of the first round to pair the 2 Colorado teammates together. In theory, I would do this if I were the Giants and this situation played out like this. However, I don't see Shedeur dropping out of the top 10. And I don't think the Giants are going to, A, have the draft capital, or B, want to spend the draft capital to move up from 34 to, maybe the 10th pick. That's going to cost a lot.
Yeah, I don't see Joe doing that either.
Is worth it.
Joe is one of those GMs who really puts an emphasis on the value of those draft picks. Some guys don't value them quite as much. Joe does.
Of course. Well, I will say that getting the 99th pick in the compensatory, that does, I guess, make
a lot.
It certainly helps a lot, and it makes doing a trade like this a little, more doable, because you still have, if you were to do this, essentially that 15th pick Shedeur would be your second round pick, essentially. Then you don't have the 64th pick or the 65th pick, but you do have a pick at the end of the third round. So it's not like you're going all of day 2 without taking someone.
Understood.
So it's something to think about.
I could see the logical path for it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I see there's a case for it. I wouldn't do it. That's all.
Fair enough.
We go back to the phones. Cliff in New York, you're next on the program.
Hey guys, great to be with you.
Hi.
Couple of questions. What's Devin Singletary's contract? Is it up, or does he still have a year left?
No, he's still under contract.
I think he's got 2 years left.
Yeah, was one of them a player option? I'm going to check right now. Go ahead. We'll check over the cap while you continue.
So he's still very much here. It seems like, I'm with you, Paul, that I like the idea of a big guy for the short yardage.
This year and next year, Cliff, by the way. This year and
sorry?
next year. He has 25 and 26 on his contract right now.
So this is his last year unless he gets extended.
No. 25 and 26.
He's got 2 years left, although I think the Giants do have a potential out after this upcoming season.
Yes.
They wanted to move on from him.
Economically.
With a small dead cap hit for next year, if that was the case.
Yes. It would be feasible business-wise after this season to part with him if you wanted to do that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, it seems like, I'm with you, Paul. I always like the idea of a big guy, but it seems running back for situations. But are you satisfied with how good Devin has been in those situations? Like, first and goal inside the 5?
Well, that's why I'd like to have a horse in the running backs room. There are certain principles. I've always wanted the skyscraper in the wide receiver room. Everybody in this building knows that. I've always wanted a bully in the running backs room. There are certain requirements, like, look, I'm sure you love oregano on your pizza, right?
Of course.
So for some reason, some people don't. I don't know why, but, I want oregano on my pizza. Well, I want a bully, a big bully, a horse in the running backs room, and I want a skyscraper in my wide receivers room. Now, that doesn't say they all have to be that way. I just want one of them. I want the mixture to include one of them in each of those rooms. So your question about Singletary, I think he's done a lot for the Giants. He's a professional. He's a great teammate. He sets a great example for the locker room. He's a solid NFL player. He's won a lot of games in his career. I mean, he's not the big bully. He's not the big horse that I would want in the room. So I'd still like to get one. Now, does that mean it comes at his expense? I don't know that it has to come at his expense. Why can't we just add a big bully into the room and have him still be part of it?
Yeah, I don't think that. I mean, obviously you never know, but I would be a little surprised if the Giants, moved on from Devin Singletary
loves him too.
This offseason. They brought him in for a reason. I think he played a role also in Tyrone Tracy's success this past year, helping him,
totally
show him the ropes, help guide him. And Singletary himself, he was solid. I'm not going to go out and say, he had put up eye-opening stats, but he was a solid veteran running back presence in that room. And that's exactly what they brought him in to be. I mean, obviously, the front office liked Tyrone Tracy because they drafted him, but I don't know if they necessarily expected him to have such immediate success like he did. I think that might have taken some people like a little bit by surprise, which obviously then put Devin Singletary a little bit on the back burner, and Tyrone Tracy became the primary back. But I think the team still very much, appreciates what he brings to the table, both on the field and in the locker room.
You're going to keep 4 backs, Cliff, right?
Yeah, well, on the field, I was impressed. It seemed to me he really delivered on short yardage. The situation where you would give it to the big bully. It seemed like he got it done. He could squirm his way through. He had a squirm ability that added to, made up for his size. It seemed he really knew how to get those extra yards. So I'm a fan of his. I just wondered how he's going to fit in, and it seems like the big impact in the draft might come from one of these super talented running backs in day 2 or 3. We might have quite a backfield going. But I really wanted to ask about Mason Graham because I've been looking for a 3-technique tackle since Leonard was traded. I totally understood trading Leonard, but I think the biggest impact on the defense could be from Mason Graham. And since I've heard twice this week he's not going to get past the top 5, why not take him at 3? What's wrong with that?
Well, because what if Travis Hunter is sitting there at 3? It's pretty hard to pass Travis Hunter. Now, I will tell you this, Cliff. He and I are the 2 guys in this building who probably, well, I don't want to speak for the guys upstairs. That's not fair. But in terms of our little broadcast team, he and I are the 2 biggest Mason Graham fans. That's without question. And believe me, it's going to hurt him and it's going to hurt me if the Giants pass on Mason Graham. But you got to take Travis Hunter if he's there. You can't pass on Travis Hunter, even though Mason Graham is going to come back and make me drool for the next 10 years in this league. You can't pass on Travis Hunter.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel the same with Abdul Carter as well. I know you might not necessarily.
The medical thing is a problem.
Of course, as long as the medical stuff clears out, then I would put those two, on a tier slightly above Mason Graham.
Yeah, you have to.
But by no means would I be upset if Mason Graham is the Giants' pick, because I just think he would be a fantastic fit on the defensive line. Next to Dexter Lawrence, just a great addition. I mean, I know the Giants spent a little bit on the defensive line in free agency between Roy Robertson Harris and then Chauncey Golston, who can line up inside a little bit, but Mason Graham is just on another level, and he seems to be consensus. Obviously, as we've come to learn, there's no such thing as necessarily a guaranteed safe pick, but in this lead up to the draft, he is widely considered to be one of the safest picks, if not the safest pick.
Cliff, you know how it would make me feel? Let's go back the year the Giants took Barkley. Going into the combine, I was all about Quentin Nelson. The Giants need to take Quentin Nelson. That was my preliminary want in that draft. They desperately needed help on the offensive line, and I felt that this guy was going to be a decade of dominance. And then we got to the combine, and I started talking to people, and I saw what was going on at the combine. I watched the drills. I started looking more and more at Barkley, and I'm like, you know what? No, it's Barkley. I think the Giants should take Barkley, and I think the Giants will take Barkley. But that caused me a lot of indigestion because I knew to do that they were going to have to pass on Quentin Nelson. And you know what? Both guys turned out to be pretty darn good, didn't they?
They sure did. Well, I've got big reservations about the edge rusher because, medicine, as you know, is an art as much as a science, and whatever they decide about his injuries is going to be their best guess. And it just seems to be a real drag on my enthusiasm. He's got two injuries going right now.
The shoulder and the foot, for those of you who don't know. And the word from Drew Rosenhaus, his agent, yesterday, is that he was opting out of Penn State's pro day today. Yeah. And that certainly is going to make you a little bit curious.
Yeah, so I'm concerned about that. And I seem to be – I'm not the only one – no, I was thinking of Shador. I might be the only one that's concerned about Hunter coming in with an individual agenda. I know that things have changed a lot in the league. They honor the players individually. They put incentives in their contract for individual performance, and they don't mind a player promoting himself. They understand that people have a brand. We saw that with Dable and Shane when Tony was here. They were supportive of him, trying to build a brand outside of football. And so I get all that, but it just bugs me that coming into the league, he's pumped up about playing both ways. And I don't think it's as easy a thing to do to say, well, we'll have a little package for him and for a receiver while he's primarily a corner, and we'll work him in. And I just keep thinking of preparation, the way Coughlin used to preach preparation. I mean, you got to prepare. If you're just in the little package and and they tell you might be up in this game, you've got to prepare for who you're going up against.
Cliff, are you suggesting he could be a distraction? Nobody that I have spoken with or heard from would even give that the slightest second guess. This guy checks every box. Too far.
Not a distraction, but it just makes me uneasy. It just makes me uneasy that he's thinking that way. I want if we're drafting the best corner in the draft, I want him to be a corner. I don't care if he's the next coming of take your pick of the all-time greats at receiver. I really don't. We're doing so much better at receiver than we were.
Cliff, I get what you're saying, and obviously we have not seen someone play full time on both sides of the ball in how long? Like, obviously, it's not something that happens these days anymore. The only thing I'll say to that, and Travis Hunter said this himself at his press conference at the Combine that Paul and I were both right there for, is that he literally just did it at Colorado. He played full-time both sides of the ball and had tremendous success on both sides of the ball. Granted, obviously, playing at Colorado, vastly different than playing in the NFL. But the fact that he was able to do that full-time on both sides of the ball makes me think that he can play full-time cornerback with maybe a package of plays at receiver. I think he is physically and, mentally going to be able to handle that. He's shown already that he can. So I don't see why you would think that there's no way he would be able to handle that when he just did it.
So then you're confident that he could prepare mentally for two positions.
Sure.
Again,
he just did it. He just did it. So yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be one thing if he did it a little bit at Colorado and was saying, "Oh, I know I can do it in the NFL," but he has a track record showing that he's capable of handling it. So that part, again, I'm not saying he's going to be full-time both ways. I don't think that's possible for anyone.
No.
But I do think it is fully possible for him to be full-time at one position with a small package of plays at the other. And if that's the case, the most likely scenario, I think, would be full-time corner with a package of plays at wide receiver.
And please, Cliff, do take a look. If you search long enough, I'm sure you'll find interviews, because I know I've heard him say this. I'll do whatever a team wants me to do. He has said, I'd love to play both ways full time. I think I'm capable of doing it, and I've proven it. But when I get to the NFL, I'll be agreeable to whatever the team wants. I've seen him say that.
Yeah, he said it at the Combine.
I saw that.
He said it at the Combine, yep.
So I don't see any issue at all.
Well, that makes me feel better. The other last thing I got, the trading down. Ever since Shane got here, I was looking for him to trade down every year. I wanted him to have 20 picks. And I really did. And I really think we're in a different situation now, especially after this latest round of free agency. Where are these? Is there 4 picks in the 105?
5 in the 105.
5 in the 105.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where are these guys going to play? Who are they going to beat out? I mean, they're going to be the best people in the draft, I just am not as enthusiastic about trading down with those guys in place.
Cliff, if you're going to trade down at all from the number 3, if you're even going to do that, to me, and I think you agree, Matt, the only logical option is you're getting stuff next year. You're getting a 1+ next year, because that becomes protection as you enhance your cupboard to maybe need to move up for a potential quarterback in the 2026 draft. That's the only logical scenario, I think, to move down.
Yeah, I mean, look, as so many people have said, the heart of this, the meat of this draft is sort of like day 2, where once you get past the top, 10, 15 players, the next, 30+ players could all be very similarly graded. So I do see the benefit of, maybe trying to add another day 2 pick as well. But yeah, the primary goal would be to stockpile as many additional draft assets as you can for 2026, where, again, we don't know now which of those, rising junior, senior quarterbacks necessarily going to declare for the draft. But right now it does look like that next year's quarterback crop is going to be more talented and a little deeper than this year. So the goal would be to get more draft assets for next year to then use as potential trade up.
Okay, I buy that completely. Next year's.
Thank you, Cliff.
Okay.
Be well.
Well, listen, I'm not an easy convince sometimes. But listen, I love the addition of Russ, obviously, with his limitations. I don't think that we're definitely finished with that project for this year yet, the quarterback room, not counting the draft. I still have a dream that Joe looks at 31 other rosters. He sees a 1, 2, and 3 QB in each team, and he sees a guy who thinks he really has a chance to be a starter, and he's that same age where the free agents came from this year, the 2021 draft, or the thereabouts. and they really think they got a winner there, that could be as equally as good as anybody that comes out of the draft this year or next. And I'm still hoping he can find that, but I just think we've made huge progress again.
Cliff, I think most people who understand the game believe the Giants have taken some steps forward. How much? We don't know, but they've taken some steps forward. Thank you so much for calling, and we'll talk to you again next week. All right.
The one thing I just want to say real quick to his first original point about Mason Graham.
Yeah.
This should tell you all you need to know, that Dan Salamone, who is the biggest Ohio State fan I know, is pounding the table saying he wants the Giants to take Mason Graham.
Are you serious?
A Michigan player. Yeah, so that should tell you all you need to know.
For real? You're not joking?
Not joking.
Do I need to confirm this upstairs?
He'll tell you. That's who he wants the Giants to take.
Wow.
So that should tell you all you need to know.
You've been working on him up there.
I didn't even need to.
He wants Tyleek.
Well, if Mason Graham is not an option, then he wants Tyleek Williams in the second round. He's made that very clear. But Mason Graham,
yeah, but I'd be okay with him in the second round. That's a good pick there, too.
I think we all would.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. We're here every weekday, 12:30 p.m. For 1 hour on Giants.com to take all of your phone calls. And, of course, we thank Adam Terry today, former NFL offensive lineman and current radio analyst with the Syracuse Orangemen. From Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. And one quick note, Pearson, who we got on the huddle just came up today. Did you put somebody up?
Yesterday we had Cam Wolf, and later today, or right now actually, it's up on all the podcast platforms, Chad Ryder.
Chad Ryder, also one of the very long-time senior NFL writers nationwide, very well respected. So we appreciate you guys for tuning in today, and we will see you again on Monday. Have a good weekend.